By observing the animal kingdom, certain sensations we will label as fear or aggression or discomfort or annoyance seem to last for a very limited period of time. Then they generally disappear from the animal's mind, leaving very few memory traces. It is only among humans that these traces, particularly the negative ones, become so often consolidated memories and often very important mental constructs too. As a consequence, we can see very different behavioral outcomes. For example, if an animal has a very bad experience with another animal, there will be some confusion or dizziness eventually, but after a while, relative psychological equilibrium will be more or less restored. But if we observe an analogously psychological experience between two human groups, suppose one Christian and the other one Muslim, or two political factions, we can eventually witness a quarrel maybe going on for days, years, or even centuries, resulting in deaths, wars, disasters, destructions, and all sorts of suffering. Memories in humans have consequences, as they produce long-lasting propagations of thoughts, such as fears, anger, hatred, even capable of protracting generationally and of course culturally for millennia. Even very young children engage in conflicts, but these are usually immediate and situational, such as "that's my toy, I want the swing" sort of situation, and disappear quickly because they are not yet tied to concepts or identity. As children grow, they begin to understand rules and concepts. For example, "that's not fair, you are cheating," and later develop a stronger ontological reasoning, conceptual categories, and groups identifications. For example, my tribe versus theirs, us and them, right and wrong, and so on. By adolescence, this evolves into ideological thinking and greatly encouraged and hijacked by cultural conditioning and inherent influences, where abstract beliefs, ideals, and worldviews become more and more perceived as something that can and should be defended, protected, and get more and more deeply internalized. The crucial cognitive shift across these stages is that concepts gradually become identified with the sense of self or identity. A growing and stronger bond gets established between the concepts a person has some affinity with and the individual sense of identity, while usually no educational influence is present to propose reflections and to provide inquiry-based orientation throughout this phase of one's cognitive and psychological development. Ideas stop being simple cognitive tools for pattern navigation, for learning and understanding, and they begin to define illusorily who one is instead. At this point, brain reactions, if not supervised, can generate psycho-emotional triggers, and as these triggers are perceived and experienced more and more as a threat to one's identity, conflict and conflicting proclivities inevitably intensify. In a parallel reality, I'm being sarcastic now, If education helped individuals become aware of this process from an early age, conceptual reasoning would, of course, still develop, but the tendency to turn ideas and concepts into conflicting attitudes will likely diminish, while ideological reasoning, ideology will likely not exist at all. Children will inevitably pass through the stages described above. They will of course learn rules, develop conceptual categories, and eventually construct complex belief systems too. These cognitive developments are cognitively normal and necessary as well. However, the conflicting attitudes associated with them may not be inevitable. The inquiry is the following. What if education included the process of helping the children become aware of the process by which they identify with their own thoughts? Such an education will not encourage nihilism, of course. On the contrary, it will encourage deeper inquiry. It will also cultivate the capacity to observe a subtle psychological movement. The moment where a concept shifts from being a tool for understanding to becoming something that influences, shapes, and defines the self. If individuals learned early in life, and not only, of course, to notice this process, not to control it, but to supervise it watchfully and carefully, conceptual development will still occur again, of course, but its psychological consequences might change in favor of enhanced reasonableness and self-awareness. Ideas could remain flexible instruments of exploration rather than rigid structures requiring a psychological defense aimed at protecting illusory constructs of psycho-existential security, such as beliefs, dogmas, ideological certainties, etc. The stages of cognitive development, again, will remain the same, but what might diminish is the automatic transformation of thought into identity, and vice versa, and therefore the compulsive need to defend that identity against others. Human conflicts in this sense may not originate simply from differences in ideas, but rather from the much deeper tendency to become existentially the ideas we hold. An education that illuminates this tendency could really open the possibility for a different and today so urgently needed relationship to thoughts, one in which reasonableness expands while hostility diminishes, one where dialogic interactions are preferred to competitive debates, one where the propensity to inquire into how we put together our reasoning processes and networks of thoughts precedes the process of externalizing and verbalizing such thoughts.